Well, hello boys and girls, it's your boy King Jiffy Coates, and today we're going to be taking a look at SCP-008 on our journey to read all of the SCPs. Oh, I guess we're doing less of reading, but creating our own narratives around them. And today our narrative follows a man named Elias Kane, a special agent who used to be New Orleans lawman. I believe it's just about time to dive into a labyrinth of flesh and fractured reality. I am Elias Kane, darling, a special investigation agent of the Foundation, forged in the smoldering embers of a life swept away like dust on a Delta breeze. Once a New Orleans lawman, I chased ne'er-do-wells through alleys reeking sorrow and sin, dreaming of a quiet porch, my wife's honey laugh, and my young'un's lopsided grin. Now just phantoms in a mind where memories fade like magnolia petals in a storm. That life withered away when I stumbled into a colt's den, their altar dripping with blood, a tumor staring back with eyes that knew too much. Foundation plucked me up, washed my past clean with anesthetics that left holes deeper than a Louisiana bayou, and handed me a new gospel: hunt for the uncanny, cage the untamable, and don't ask questions unless you're ready to lose what little soul you got left. At 42, I'm a husk in a hazmat suit, my skin a tapestry of scars singing different tales depending on which timeline you're picking at. My soul's a ledger of wails, some mine, some from the critters that ought never to have cried out, some from reality seeping through the cracks like the fate of a swamp water through the levee. I chain smoke down the guilt, each cigarette a quiet rebellion against a universe that's forgotten how to make sense. Beretta's the only anchor in a world where reality phrased like a fever dream spun by some mad Creole storyteller. Stars pushing in codes no soul can decipher, each beat a heartbeat in a cosmic body that might be dying or being born. SCP-008, the zombie plague, is my latest descent. A prion that don't just kill but rewrites flesh, sanity, and the very weaves of existence. Like a voodoo curse gone wild, it spreads through blood, spit, or lover's betrayal, each path a road to damnation. Not airborne, which my friend Julian calls a fleeting mercy meant to tease false hope. But when you're facing a horde of walking dead flickering in quantum shadows, mercy's just a pretty word, not a thing you can hold. The Foundation's papers say SCP-008 hails from beyond the stars, too strange for the Earth's ways, but I've seen enough to know it's worse. A narrative plague infecting not just flesh, but the very idea of infection, spreading through stories, scribbles, and the act of looking itself. Every time we study it, cage it, fight it, we're feeding it, giving it new ways to etch itself across 1,000 worlds. There was a slaughterhouse gumbo, cordite, frostbit and rotten meat thick as a Mississippi fog, beneath Stalingrad's broken bones, and bunkers carved from frozen earth. The SS Honorbe played their fool's game. They thought they could tame SCP-008, stuffing it into rat bombs, squealing harbingers of doom meant to turn the war's side. They wanted a weapon. They got a massacre that sang across 17 different timelines, each note a dirge. Rats chewed free, spreading the prion like wildfire through the tunnels. Soldiers and folks clawed their faces raw in hours, fevers raging like a summer revival, minds melting into madness that spoke in tongues no preacher could bless. By the 20th hour they were still, then rose. flesh green as swamp moss, sinews strong as a cypress roots, stumbling through the snow soaked red with the bones of their kin. My partner, Special Agent Julian Locke, later showed me the truth buried in the Foundation's archives, sweet as secrets whispered in a juke joint. The records came in 17 flavors, each a shot of the same slaughter seen through the different fates. In one, the Weremark, but let it rot in a vault, too proud to beg help from their own victims. In another, Stalin himself caught the Prion on a cursed tour, turning the Soviet Union into a graveyard of shuffling scribes, their pens dripping black as they wrote of a war long dead. Precision smoother than a con man's tongue mapped the pattern across those 17 tales.
Stalingrad wasn't just the Prion's first dance, Elias,
he said, his pale eyes shining like the moonlight on the bayou.
It was its first lesson in breaking reality, spinning off parallel worlds to keep itself alive across all histories. This Prion don't just taint flesh, it taints the story of the time itself, rewriting the past to secure its future.
The outbreak was no mistake ritual. Not a Nazi blunder, but a test older than the Reich, something that knew SCP-008 was the key to unlock worlds. Maybe the Thule Society or shadows of cults worshipping Yaldabaoth since before the first cotton bloomed. They knew it wasn't just a play, it was a hymn to tear down the walls between what is and what might be. Then the briefing hit like a Cajun riddle, coming through 17 channels, each a sliver of truth that didn't match its kin. I was in a Syracuse dive, a place flickering like a firefly, now a roughneck bar, now a fancy lounge for Foundation folk, now a crossroads where reality blends together like bourbon spilled in a barroom floor. The bourbon in my glass rippled backward, defying the laws of nature like a conjured man's trick. Time stuttering, each second splitting into possibilities, showing me glimpses of what could be and what ought never to breathe. The call came at 3:17 a.m. A voice crackling through static like bayou banshees. Blackwood Mansion, SCP-008, breach confirmed, 8-hour blackout. My stomach twisted like I'd swallowed a mess of crawfish shells in dread. Blackwood, a hidden G2 vault, was built to keep the world from ended. 8 hours of silence meant the Prion loose, and I was a hound sent to chase it down again. Julian Locke not walked, but appeared. Like Sherlock solving a puzzle spun from starlight in the shadow, his black suit, clean as a preacher's conscience, seemed to hum at a frequency apart from the world. His pale eyes caught the bar's neon layers, each glint a window to worlds I couldn't fathom.
Briefings don't agree,
he said, voice as smooth as aged whiskey, cutting through the bar's hum like a knife through cane.
Version 3.7 says the breach was 8 hours ago. Sets it next Tuesday. Version 3.9.
He tilted his head like a DuPont hearing a tune from another time.
It ain't happened yet, but the bodies are already cold.
I stubbed out my cigarette, the bitter as regret and time's-old confusion. The Foundation's meddling with fate again, I drawled, lighting another from the dim dying ember.
SCP-008 ain't just a prion, it's a story that rewrites itself, twisting cause and effect to keep on living.
Julian's eyes pinned on me like he was reading my soul across a dozen worlds at once.
Exactly, Elias. But what if the Foundation didn't start this time tangling? What if SCP-008 itself is the weaver, spinning new worlds with every infection? Each zombie births a timeline, wins, fails, somewhere it never was, all seeping into ours like oil through a grate.
Road to Blackwood was a journey through a world done gone tipsy. Like a drunk fiddler playing out a tune, signs flickering between Blackwood Mansion 5 miles and Blackwood Mansion does not exist. Each shift tricking with my racing pulse like a metronome in a voodoo chant. The highway itself danced, smooth asphalt and cold cobblestone, then something too much like warm breathing skin, pulsing with a dread that matched my own. My hazmat suit shifted like river changing course. Military gear, now fancy Victorian driving rig. Now a clear skin showing my innards moving to alien rhythms, hinting I might not be all human anymore. Form felt real. Worked. Each whispered that reality was up for barter. Julian drove with a calm smoother than a moonlit bayou, his fingers playing over a gadget that was pocket watch, part quantum machine, part something alive, surface crawling with patterns that stung eyes.
The mansion's in quantum flux,
he said, his voice steady as southern bartenders draw in a storm.
Each SCP-008 breach spills reality, piling it up, infection tails like layers of Spanish moss. We're living all of them. We're living all of them at once, stacked like pages in a cursed book.
The force around us mocked the laws of nature, trees growing down into the sky, roots weaving canopies of dirt and stone, hiding stars that pulsed like code in a Creole hum. Shadows moved on their own, showing glimpses of worlds where other versions of us made different choices, all heading to the same grim end.
See the pattern, Elias?
Julian urged, his voice cutting through the static screaming from our radio.
Blitz ain't random. Follow the rhyme of a story and fate. Each world branches, then someone makes a choice about SCP-008. Mansion's the heart of it all, a still point in a sea of changing tides.
The road throbbed like a living thing, and I knew we weren't just driving to Blackwood, we were being pulled, drawn through fate's veins to a heart beating with the pulse of a plague. Blackwood Mansion was a fever dream dressed in southern finery. A place existing in every age at once, like a house built by a mad architect with a taste for eternity. Gothic spires breathed in and out Art Deco lines, while kernel pillars held up the staircase that twisted up, down, and sideways into places that minds could not hold. My flashlight lit tapestries showing plagues yet to come, their threads spinning tales of sickness that changed when I looked away. Portraits stared back, folks alive, dead, plagued, their eyes tracking us with looks that begged, blamed, or thanked us for seeing at all. The air was heavy, thick with rot and electrical tang of the ozone laced with something older, whispered in tongues no human ought to know, speaking of gods whose names were diseases. Every room flickered, now a grand ballroom shining like a debutante's ball, now a slaughterhouse soaked in blood, now a lab with walls pulsing like a living thing. Julian moved through it all with a grace smoother than a riverboat gambler, his pale eyes taking tales that danced in a quantum haze.
The house itself is sick,
he muttered, tracing a banister that shifted from oak iron to something that looked like living bone.
SCP-008 doesn't just eat flesh. It eats space, turning the walls and rooms into stories that live in every shape at once.
We found traces of other teams' gear from missions in other worlds, dog tags with names I didn't know, journals telling of SCP-008 strains that broke every rule, hinting the prion was changing, or maybe always was something we're only starting to see. In the mansion's belly we found the heart of the riddle. Dr. Leanne Voss, was there in 7 forms, real, each sharing the same space like a ghost at a midnight ball. Alpha Voss lay broken, her face twisted by SCP-008-1, eyes like clouded milk, jaw unhinged like a cottonmouth, sharp as cane knives, skin peeling to show muscle leaking black oil that moved like it had a mind. Beta Voss stood tall, talking her science like a professor at a revival, prattling on about protein folds, blind to her own death. Gamma Voss was caught changing, screaming about the chaos insurgency as her flesh warped in ways no body should. The others was stranger still. A math problem describing the plague, a cloud of chance that sometimes took a shape, a story of sickness waiting to be told. Julian stepped to each with a Sherlock-like, cool curiosity, seeing them as a piece in a grand puzzle.
The Brion's got a hold of fate itself,
he said, kneeling by Alpha while scribbling Beta's words.
And they're all pouring in. Each breach spins a new world, and they're all pouring into something this one moment.
I put a bullet through Alpha Voss's head, the shot ringing like a church bell in a cursed cathedral. Her brains splashed across the stone. There was both clean lab and ancient altar carved with signs older than sin. Beta Voss kept talking, unbothered by the blood sharing her spaces, like a dance of brains and bloodshed straight from a mad poet's pen. Julian found Beta Voss was speaking of experiments from other worlds, her every choice, life, death, success, and failure, bleeding into ours like a river overflowing its banks.
She's carrying the chance of infection.
Voice like a noir detective's revelation, clear as a bell in a storm.
Every cure she might have found all live here in one story.
Job was untangled breach, to find the thread in this bayou of broken fates. The containment chamber's steel door was blown from the side, the twisted metal singing of an explosion across worlds, shattering glass from SCP-008's vitals, sparked like stars falling into a cursed earth, catching light from places that weren't there. A vial lay smashed on purpose, its break clean as a surgeon's cut. The logs pointed to Dr. Marcus Reed, a biochemist with a habit of asking questions that ruffled feathers. His last words were a sermon in blood and cold.
Flesh is gospel, the Prion is word. Yaboth calls for freedom from time's change.
Julian traced the spiral of thorns on the wall, glowing with numbers tracking the plague across worlds.
Elegant,
he whispered, his voice heavy as a funeral's hymn.
The land of masks and rot. Read through SCP-08 was its gift. A conjure plague to unravel the world's false seams.
Reed was in 7 forms, a loyal scientist, traitor, puppet of mind-twisting spells, a prophet of a flesh faith, a math problem, and things woods could not hold. His lab was a shrine to the impossible, its machines running on rules that laughed at physics, powered by spaces between worlds. Vials changed their fill, prion, liquid fate, screams turned to crystal, humming at pitches that shook reality like a storm-tossed skiff.
The insurgency's using SCP-008 to pry open reality's locks,
he said, cutting through the chaos.
They're weaving worlds into one story where they call it the Tune.
Their plan was a devil's brew, SCP-008, a nanotech plague that struck 6 hours, spreaded by air, and turned folks into predators. Worse was SCP-008 Finback, making flesh into plague meals, spitting out one body into many, breaking every law of nature.
They ain't terrorists,
Julian said, his eyes with impossible shapes.
They're storytellers, with a tale to overwrite all the others.
The growls came like flood of nightmares, wet with guttural meat dragged over broken glass, voices trying to speak in tongues older than a river. SCP-008-1 on instances poured in, 40, 50, 100, each a verse in a hymn of doom from across worlds. Some ran with exocet speed, hunting like panthers in the dark. Others shambled slow like ghosts from a Romero tale, driven by hunger deeper than death. Worst were the shapes of math-made flesh, ripping with cold precision, flickering between forms like a broken lantern. Their skin peeled like old paint, showing muscles pushing with unnatural might. Their eyes, black as oil, saw across worlds. Some burst, spitting out new copies, flesh kitten in a horror that made a swamp flinch. Julian fought with a determined grace, his silent pistol singing soft deaths, each shot true across flickering realities. I fought like a man drowning in madness, my Berettas barking at a world gone wrong. Julian spoke through the chaos.
Their stories, Elias, each a different end to a plague's tale. Bled out, burned fever, eaten by prions, all here at once.
His calm was a light in the dark, but it chilled me to the bone. We reached the incineration controls, hampered with Reed's devilish skill. Julian rewired circuits that danced between wire and light, tapping into worlds no engineer could dream. The air stank of rot, ozone, and something ancient of sin itself. I hit override, and the mansion burned across 17 worlds. The flames weren't just fire, burned clean. Some melted time like a painter's fever dream, caught the plague and spreading it through heat. The infection screams wove a song of pain's mathematics. Julian pulled me back, his grip steady as a river's flow.
The protocol ain't for stopping plague,
he said, eyes catching fires that burned in colors no man could see.
It's for watching it, riding down every way it can be.
At headquarters, a fortune between worlds, I pored over Reed's notes with Julian. Exocet could choke millions. SCP-500 was a dream rare to touch. SCP-2000 might not outrun the plague's math. Whispering from the SCP's faithful tied 008 to 610 and 049. All children of Gabbath, the maker of broken things. SCP-682 loomed. Maybe a plague bearer nothing could kill. Reed's scribbles called SCP-008 Algada's gift. A wrought to undo time's chains. The G2 sites were altars, not ours, built to call powers from beyond.
It's a story-eating plague,
Julian said, voice heavy as a funeral bell.
We ain't caging it in. We're messengers, spreading it through every look and every word.
I ain't slept in weeks, maybe months. Time's a slippery eel now. Blackwood's burned souls and Site 47's death are singing in my head. There's screams of choir and keys that don't exist. Voss's broken jaw haunts me across worlds, her eyes blaming me in every choice I made or didn't. My apartment shifts. Foundation bunk, cop's den, a place where walls show cases yet to come. Family's photo, wife's laugh, my child's grin, flickers between real and not. The anesthetics didn't just erase, spun a web of possible pasts. Julian says I'm living all my bends. Worse, I might be SCP-008 itself, a story chasing its own tail to keep plague alive. The briefing room was a tangle of worlds, headquarters, a New Orleans precinct, a lecture hall, a place where paper grew minds and griped about reality. Though 5 councils spoke in voices that bend times, the shadows heavier than light.
Agent Kane,
They sang.
your report holds 47 truths. True, each at odds.
I answered in every way, defiant, broken, mad.
SCP-008 ain't caged nor loose. It is the cage. A play writes itself into what might be.
As Julian said as he stood beside me, a figure of elegant certainty. This has been my tale of SCP-008. I hope y'all enjoyed. It was sure as hell fun to research, create, and I hope y'all feel the same way. So go down in the comments below, let me know what you think about SCP-008, and make sure to leave a like while you're down there, and hell, maybe even subscribe. And until next time, I want y'all to know something. Please stop gooning in the closet.